are proud individuals living for the city, but the flame couldn't go much higher. We find God and religions to paint us with salvation, but no one, no nobody can give you the power to rise over love and over hate. Through this iron sky that's fast becoming our mind, over free earth.
Well,
and
hello,
into
hello, hello.
freedom.
It's amazing. I think that's the most people we've ever had on the Healing Heart. So that's very special. Of course, we have a special guest today. Also, we're completely split 50-50 people who have been with us before and people for which this is the first time. So anybody who is free here, welcome, welcome. Or not free, but the first time here. We still have some people coming in. So that's super nice. Well, what are we doing here at the Hearing Heart? What is this Hearing Heart all about? So really, it's in its simplest term, it's a place for us where we can go and just have real, raw, and vulnerable conversation about the stuff and the shit that we're carrying and that may not be in our highest and greatest good anymore. And hopefully that we can create a little bit more space, a little bit more freedom around our own narratives in our head and see whether maybe we can create something that is more in alignment with what we want, with what our being wants, and what we want to see in the world. So really, this is, I find, a place where we get to be the change, and it's really happening right in front of our eyes. It's a bit like growing out loud, and that's yeah. The way that I think it usually transpires is we have someone on the hot seat, what we call the hot seat. The hot seat is where a person, and usually I, because I'm usually the one who facilitates this conversation, the two of us will just have a conversation about something that's really challenging, that they find constricted by, that people find constrained in. And from that point, we'll see if we can create maybe a bit of a shift where we can see whether there is a different way of looking at it. And today we have one of our very own, Danny. He volunteered to be in the hot seat. So today there won't be a selection period where we get to select who wants to be in the hot seat. It's very excited to have him here today. And I guess that's one of the reasons why there are so many people here. So that's really cool. And I think it's really a great way actually of showing and showcasing a bit what this place and what this space here is all about. Well, I would say without much further ado, I will start the place or this time together by just doing a quick introduction, a quick grounding exercise where we just get into the energies all together. And then from then on, we're going to bring Danny on and we'll see what's here in the space for him. And everybody else at that time, and I'll remind you, will just turn off their camera. And then we two are being in the spotlight, so everybody can just be a fly on the wall and listen to our conversation and see where this goes. Then at the end, we will have a bit of time for sharings, where people get to share what they've gotten from the conversation, maybe something that resonated with them specifically, so we can really nicely kind of wrap this up. Also, during the conversation, please feel free to write your thoughts, write your possibly even questions into the chat. And just know that I won't be reading them, other than maybe they pop up in the bottom on my screen. So maybe I can read like half a sentence or so. But I won't be reading them because I want to be like fully present with whomever I'm talking. But afterwards, it's always very, very helpful also for the person who has been in the hot seat to receive those messages. And I'll usually send them the chat, just a text message.
And share your truth.
Well, if anybody is, wait, I'm gonna mute people. Here we go. Um, so if you have something that you would love to share or something that you think may be important for the person in the hot seat to receive, please just put it into the chat. And it's always a very nice, just creates the whole energy in the space in the room. All right, guys. Well then. Let's get us started with a bit of a grounding exercise so that we can just land in the place here all together. There's still some people popping in, so I'll just let them in. If you're in a place where it's safe for you, if you're not driving, you're not doing anything else, the invitation is just to sit upright with your spine straight and maybe give yourself a bit of a stretch. Just give yourself a few moments to settle in, to do whatever your body asks of you right now. And then if it feels good, you can also start closing your eyes. And just starting to turn inward. We all have our days and maybe even weeks where we go through changes, through transformations, through challenges. And right here, right now is the time where we just get to be with ourselves, where we get to show up for ourselves. We get to be present with what's here for us right now. We all bring something special. We all bring something special also to this space. And often the magic really is in us all coming together and sharing what's there. And so often the person sharing is just the most vocal person at that time. But so often there is so much truth that's being spoken that really speaks to everybody else on the call as well. We're going to take one really deep breath in. So we're going to first push all the air out through the nose or through the mouth. Then a slow and steady breath in through the nose. And we're going to hold it at the top for a second. Really feel your lungs, feel your belly, and just hold it at the top for a sec. Maybe you feel a bit of pressure in your chest, in your head, maybe a tingly sensation. And then we just let it go. Just let it fall away naturally, however it feels right to you. And then I would like to invite you to think and to set an intention inside of yourself what tonight is for you, what you would like to receive from today. What is it that you would like to get from this conversation without knowing what the conversation is about? Maybe it's a feeling, maybe it's an emotion that you would like to stand in more. Maybe there's something that's been bugging you and you like to have some more clarity around it, maybe even some resolution. So whatever it is, hold it tightly, hold it in your heart, in your mind's eye. And then we're going to breathe that intention in. We're going to hold the intention at the top. Again, all the air out. Then slow and steady, Breath in through the nose, fill up your belly, fill up your lungs, and hold it at the top. Just for a second or two. And then send it out into the ether, into universe, into nature, and let it take care of itself. Then we're going to do one more. Breath in, we're going to hold it at the top. And just for this time here that we have decided to come together and to spend our time and energy in this space and place, we're just going to let go of everything that is bothering us, that is swirling around in our minds, things that we got to do tomorrow. And all of that, we just let that out with a nice sigh of relief. So we're going to take a deep breath in. Let it fall away. And then whenever you're ready, feel free to come back, open your eyes, and welcome. Then today, as we said, we already have our guest of honor. We have Danny. We're putting him here in the the spotlight without
Oh, I don't like the spotlight, Swiss.
oh, I know. It's okay, guys. Then we're gonna, without further much ado, we're gonna everybody else who is not in the hot seat now, just turn off your camera, please. And then we're gonna say, before we start, we're gonna do a quick prayer. We're just gonna hold Danny in our hearts, in our minds. And we're just gonna set the intention and we're gonna make sure it's in our highest and greatest good what we're doing here for everybody involved. I'm gonna say a few words and I'm always gonna give you a few moments to just repeat. You can either do it inside of you, you can also just speak it out loud, whatever feels right to you. Maybe you want to close your eyes again, that's totally up to you. Okay. All right. Well, Danny. Danny, we will not rescue you, for you are not a victim. We will not fix you, for you are not broken. We will not heal you, for we see you in your wholeness. Instead, we walk with you through the darkness, so you may remember your light. And so it is.
That's beautiful, that is.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I feel seen and held and supported.
Boom, there we go. All right, we're done. Fine.
All right, brilliant. Thanks everyone for
Hang on.
coming. All right.
Before we start, my friend,
Yeah,
if I work with people that I have a friendship with or I interact with personally,
yeah.
I just always ask if I have your permission to be in fully in my role as the facilitator, where I am here not as your friend, but as the facilitator who tries his utmost to create the space and place for the openness and the possibility of a transformation happening. And sometimes I'll say things or I'll act in a way maybe a little bit different than what we do privately. So I'm just asking for that permission up front. Is that okay with you?
No, I prefer you read from the script I sent you.
Yeah. Okay, good.
No, of course it is. Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything
Okay.
less from you.
Yeah, brilliant. I just want to make that always very clear.
Yes, mate.
All right, my friend. Well, where do we begin?
Well, I don't know. Where do you begin? It's always interesting when you've got sort of like a room of observing people in any given situation when you do, like I've been through lots of traditional therapy in my life as well. And in certain with certain therapists or certain sessions and stuff, you're always a little bit sort of tentative about what you say, or even if you're like sort of going to make a joke, because it can be everyone's going like reading into the innuendos behind everything. So it's an interesting feeling to have all this observation taking place. It's such a very what is it, a very vulnerable endeavor, not just for me, but for anyone else who takes the hot seat. It's a very courageous thing to do. It really is. And I can feel actually now more, I can feel a lot more nervousness than I usually do when I'm in sort of like a MIGA situation, or if I'm talking on a video or anything else. But I can feel that sort of palpable frequency shift of like, this is going to be, we're going into something now, which is both wonderful and terrifying, to be honest.
Well, welcome to the hot seat.
Yeah, exactly. Look, to be honest, look, I think like everyone knows a lot about me already, yeah. So it feels like you don't really need to have too much of a background. But for people who don't know me, I think it's always wise to be, whenever you go into this situation, is to give some context as to why I am like I am, and my background, and how that's sort of been represented in my life now. And so I was born into sort of working class East London roots, to a very young father, pretty young mother, in council estate, very sort of like not poor, but not having much sort of resources available, into an environment of a lot of dysfunctionality when it came to substance abuse, and a lot of violence, on the periphery in our household, but on the periphery as well, in our extended family and family friends. It seemed like there was always some kind of dramatic, violent episode would erupt out of a kid's fate, a fucking picnic in the park, whatever it was. There always seemed to be this episode, and I feel like my mum, she was very much aware that she didn't want to live like that for the rest of her life. So having seen a lot of violence go on in our household, my mum one day just turned up to pick us up from school in a car which was full of black bags, and off we went. And we went from, if anyone who knows London, we went from one side of London to the other, which is quite a distance from all of our family, everything we'd ever known. And we were just shifted into this, where we stayed in like a women's refuge for quite a while, and then to different houses and different flats, and all of this sort of upheaval, where a lot of what children need is stability. That's one of the clearest sort of things we can able to give our children, is a stable environment. And ours was anything but that. And I've got an older brother. I'm the middle child, for all of you amateur psychiatrists out there. um, I've got an older brother who's very close age wise to me. He's 15 months older than me, and I've got a younger brother as well. I've also got a half brother, but I'm gonna not talk about him because he wasn't in our family dynamic, so it doesn't really make much sense. My older brother, just to give you some kind of context of my role in the family, because I think that's incredibly important, is someone who I believe has been undiagnosed with some kind of autism or Asperger's or something along those lines. And so he was always very different. And it was like I was almost the older child all the time, And so from the get-go, just to give you a sort of a picture, a visual understanding, when we left East London to go to South London, we went to like a social housing place in Lewisham. And during we was in this little like meeting room, and my mum was sort of like trying to explain what was going on and where we were going to live now and all this stuff. And I said, "Don't worry, mum," and I pulled out a fucking like a Rambo knife, like a real one. You know, it was my dad's. It was he'd hidden it under his bed, and I'd stolen it some weeks before. I feel somewhere along the lines to defend my mum at some point, probably from him or from someone else. And so this sort of how old was I? 5, 6. This little 6-year-old boy was already taking this role of being the father figure of his family, you know, the protector. And of course, my mum, being the sane, normal woman she is, she went, "What the fuck is that?" And she grabbed the knife and when I was gutted, she threw it in a bin outside the office, which was always I was like, "Oh fuck, that was a good knife." And that sort of like really lays the foundation for my sort of role in my family. And as I grew up, I I was always very much like who I am, right? And just to give that a little bit of context, I know Swiss, I know you're very familiar with the human design, and probably lots of people on the call are. I've got a very particular, specific human design, you know, and I feel that throughout my life, whatever's gone on, I can look back knowing that design now, and I can see that kind of that skill set or that ability or those values or whatever it is, those strengths have come through my life with me. And this, as we were speaking just before we got on the call about the nature nurture, you know, argument, and I find that incredibly valid, is because we're sort of like in this space where we're looking at what you could say is the nurture. Like I was put into that environment and stuff, but then within me, something within me has got that. It's already got that. I don't know what it is, a genetic makeup to be dispositioned as someone who's able to hold that role, you know. And then throughout my life, I've always been someone who I feel was incredibly outspoken, very, very, probably very quite quick to lose my temper. Well, yeah, very quick to lose my temper. Very short fuse, very similar to my dad, very similar to my granddad, you know, very similar to a lot of the males in my family. And I found that throughout my sort of childhood, I was always the kid in the playground fighting. You know, I was always getting into trouble, and it was always seems to be, it was either fighting or it was showboating, you know, trying to be the funny kid or the kid who's like always going to go a bit further than everyone else. And I feel that taking that into my adult life, when I became enmeshed in quite a lot of violent episodes myself in my teens, in my late teens and early 20s, to the point where I was getting into quite a lot of trouble. And it was almost sort of like the mirror of my dad, you know, and how he was sort of like a young. I always likened my dad as like a runaway train. You know, he was like a train you couldn't stop. He was just like a locomotive on the tracks, and anyone got in his way when he was in that vibe, you were just getting mowed over. And I kind of took that on, that kind of same thing, you know, that same sort of energy. And like I say, I got into a lot of trouble, and my mum's probably going to watch this because it's being recorded, so she's going to find out this for the first time. But I got into trouble, and I got given what they called at the time. It was called some kind of it was an antisocial court order or something like that. And what it was is I had to go and do community service, or I had to take part in these anger management classes. And so, of course, like, I was thinking, I'm not picking up litter on the side of the road. You know, I'm going to go and do this anger management. I'll just play that. And what ended up happening was that I actually started to learn stuff about myself. You know, and I was only 20. I was only 20, 21, probably, yeah, just turned 20. I was. So I was already like I was mad to the point it was like I used to fight at the drop of a hat. You know, I was always the guy fighting in the pub. Like anything, I would be just there getting involved. And it became almost like my monocle then, you know, my moniker. Like I was like the guy. I was like a bit of a known face as someone. I mean, in a very small little fish pond fucking area of London. So it's not like I was Reggie Cray for anyone else who knows that is. But it was just sort of this, I don't know, a frequency that I carried where I I was acting out, you know. I was acting out. I was the feeling that I was carrying inside. I was manifesting that into my external world in like lots of violence, and then sort of like very promiscuous, really like unhealthy sexual encounters, and then drugs, you know. And then I got into drugs, and then it was like that was like another sedative almost, you know. But the anger management stuff, it had planted something in me. There was a seed that planted that I didn't have to live like this. You know, there was a choice, and I was very unaware up until that point about this choice, about this alternative way of handling yourself with a level of sort of control over your actions, as opposed to just becoming whatever that emotion is and just delivering that instantaneously. And so then I went through my 20s, and I was sort of, you know, still learning about this psychology, reading all the books, you know, all of the self-help books and all of this sort of stuff into the human psychology, the human mind, these coping mechanisms and stuff. And then I was going out and fighting. So I was living like a very sort of paradoxical, polarized existence. And it always felt like there was an element of like self-harm to that, you know. And and then as I got a bit older, I was enmeshed in a very dysfunctional relationship for quite a long time, which again I was probably I would never call it I could never really say I was an addict, because I've always been very easy to turn things off quite quickly. But I would binge, you know, like I would binge. I would go out for days on benders, you know, coke and fucking E's and whatever else I could get my hands on. And I went on probably for most of my 20s in that vein. And then around my 30th birthday, which I think's probably got some significance to it, I started to feel like this is not enough. You know, like this relationship I was in, and at the time there was all this talk of marriage and children, and I was always going along with it. Yeah, that's gonna be, yeah, let's just go with that. That seems right, and it was almost like an automated life. You know, I didn't have any idea of who I really was. And then on my 31st birthday, I split up with my girlfriend at the time, and a few weeks later, I fucked off to Singapore for what was meant to be a 3-week holiday, and then I stayed in Thailand for a year on my own in a little wooden hut there, and I had a suicide attempt when I was out there, and it was. I know you're familiar with this feeling, Swisher, because I know that you've gone through it, and you often liken it to the dark night of the soul. And we can say that sort of like, for me, it sort of feels like you're just being swallowed up by the shadows, you know, like the darkness has just engulfed your whole existence, and you can't see any happiness, you can't see any point. There's no sort of meaning. There's no like, what am I doing here, you know? And that feeling, like, it just overtook me, and I just thought, I can't take this anymore. I can't even breathe, you know, like the anxiety and the panic in me all the time. I just couldn't breathe anymore. And then I had this. And at the time as well, just to give a little bit of context to that, I was on the verge of becoming an alcoholic. I was sitting with, I had two friends who had a very nice resort in this island in Thailand, and we used to just like see how many bottles of whiskey we could drink on a night. You know, like we were just like going for it, like absolutely like self-sabotage. And I got to the point where one morning I was like, I walked from my hut, and my hut was right up the back of the right in the end of the resort, and I walked all the way through the resort, and I was crying my eyes out, and I just walked through everyone, and I couldn't even see anyone. It was like I think it was January, which is like high season in Thailand, and I just walked through everyone, and like it was like I was just this. It was like a fog of people, and I just kept walking and kept walking. I just walked into the sea, and that was it. I just swam and swam and swam until I had no energy left, and I was like, I couldn't see the shore. I was in the middle of the ocean on my own, and I just thought, I've had enough. I've had enough. Can't do this anymore, and I let go. And as I started going into the water, and I started coughing, and I thought, oh, fuck this. I actually want to live. You know, there was something went, oh, no, you don't want to die. You don't, you know. But I kind of had to see that. I had to feel that. I had to tease that, taste that feeling of like, of what it would be just to completely let go of myself. And so then I swam back, and I checked myself into a Muay Thai retreat, which was sort of 6 weeks of like you had to be there. I paid for it, and I trained for 6 weeks. Like and like, you know, I come from a family of boxers and stuff, so it was good for me, you know, to move. And actually, funny enough, Mary, she's on the call now, so she'll remember this from the other night. She said that it's like one of the most beautiful fucking quotes I've ever heard is that depression can't hit a moving target. And there's so much fucking truth in that. Yeah. And that's not to say that if you are suffering with depression, sometimes, or whatever that is, the shadow self, or sometimes you have just got to let yourself lay down in bed and just be and just sit. But the idea of like continuously keeping yourself, you know, like active and allowing that flow to come back is incredibly important to me and still is today. And so I went through this Muay Thai thing and eventually came back to London a year later, and after the Muay Thai camp, I was sort of I distanced myself from the drinking culture, and I spent probably a good few months sitting in this little hut, just I call it crying, which is like cry writing. You know, which I still do today. Actually, a lot of my articles, a lot of the content that you read of mine, I'm crying when I write that because I feel like I'm open hearted and I'm just really it's all just falling out, you know. And I spent a lot of time in that place. And then when I came back to London, I moved back into my dad's house. And then that was almost sort of like reliving my past as a child again, you know, like it was a very sort of, my dad, as much as like he's a very charming, charismatic man, and he's, you know, he's a good man in his whole, but he's got a volatile nature. It's died off now because he's got older, but like when he was younger, he had this volatility about him that would like it would put people on edge, you know. And after that, I moved moved in with my auntie, and then I started like I'd already been sort of someone who'd done a lot of mushrooms and psilocybin, but I started really sort of like trying to push the real boundaries of my consciousness, you know, like doing like incredibly high doses of magic mushrooms to be able to really get into that stuff. And I found that like incredibly healing, right? Because I wasn't doing it in the past when I was younger, I was doing it recreationally. But then when as an older guy, I was sort of like, right, what am I trying to get shift now? What am I trying to work on? You know, what is it this is there? And then from that, that space, I stopped drinking for a very, very long time. And then I was still smoking a lot of weed as a sedative. And then I met one of the things I wanted to do because I was like, again, just to give you some idea, I was consistently through, I would say from my early 20s, I was consistently in counselling, in therapy. Like maybe like there might be a gap of 2 years, but then I was like, then I'd do another 6 months, and then there'd be a little gap, and then I'd do another couple of months, and then a different therapist, and I was always sort of like in this trying to get rid of this, you know, what that is that's fucking causing me this fucking pain all the time, you know. And I had read a lot about and researched a lot about ayahuasca. So I was sort of like, okay, maybe this is what I need, you know. So at the time I met Hannah, and she was straight away, she was like, yeah, that sounds brilliant, you know, like, I could do with some of that as well. So we fucked off to Peru, and we done 2 retreats together, and then I went back just before the kids were born, before the twins were born, and I'd done another retreat on my own. And I don't know if anyone's done ayahuasca, but if you go to a reputable retreat place that is very structured, and it's very sort of it's considered and it's detailed, and they really give a fuck about what they're doing, it can be incredibly positive and supportive about the journey that you're on. And so having done that, and then, you know, really sort of starting to feel like I got to the root of the issue. Yeah. I'll give you just quickly. I don't want to stay too long in ayahuasca world, but I think this is it's very poignant to the discussion. Is one, and this is very much my character as well, right? Because on the first ceremony, have you done ayahuasca, Swiss?
About 30 times.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know.
So tastes good, doesn't it?
Oh, treat, it's a treat.
So I'm just gonna have a swig of water. My mouth's a bit dry from all this. So on the first ceremony, because I was very aware that this, like I'd done a lot of research into it. I was aware that this was like another level of diving into whatever it is we are, and how that opens up dimensions and all other sorts of stuff. And the first night, I remember going in the Maloka, and I went up to the shaman, and you have to put your intention, don't you, into the cup. And so I said, just be gentle with me, Mother Ayahuasca. Like not out loud, but in my head, just be gentle with me. You know, I'm very, very nervous, and you know, I'm a bit scared, and just be gentle with me. And I had like all of that first ceremony. I had all of the geometric stuff. I purged a little bit, like threw up a bit, and I felt I had a little cry and stuff, which I often done on mushrooms, and I opened up sort of parts and stuff. But I was a little bit disappointed after the first ceremony. I was thought like, no, that didn't get to it, did it? It didn't work, did it? So the second ceremony, which was a couple of nights later, I went in and I was like, I got a full cup, and I sat there again, and I was like, do your worst, all right, do your worst to me, get it out of me, like get whatever this is that's holding me back, fucking get it out. And did she? Fuck. You know, I genuinely thought like I was going to die, right? I thought like, this is it. I'm dead. You know, I've overdone it. I'm dead. And I was going through this like spinning, like it's difficult to, for anyone who hasn't done it, it's like, it's very difficult to sort of explain it because it's so out there. But there's almost like no idea of reality anymore. Like you can't hold on to any kind of reality. You're just gone. You know, everything's gone. Your identities have gone. You're just this almost just like this spiraling fucking observations flying through the universe, and you're being sick and you're fucking shitting yourself, and like, it's all just like really, really terrifying. Yeah, absolutely terrifying. And then all of a sudden, like, I kind of got hold of this like narrative came to me, and I was like, I didn't know what it was, but I was searching for something. Yeah? I was just like pulling fucking doors open, and I was like, it felt like I approached like almost like a derelict hotel, like a big old wooden derelict hotel. You could liken it to something like The Shining. And I was pulling these doors open and running down a hallway, and pulling more doors open and turning, and I was opening more doors and more doors. And as I was doing it, the whole space I was in was getting smaller and smaller, more narrow and narrow and smaller. And I was getting more like crowding down, and then I'm crawling now, and I'm crawling and crawling. I'm opening up fucking trapdoors and fucking attics and everything. And then all of a sudden, I'm pulling on this door, and I can't get this door open. I'm pulling and pulling and pulling. I could feel myself in the room going like, on this door, and I pulled it open, and there was me as a child there, and it was feral. That's the only way to describe that child. It was feral. Yeah, it was like all of the fucking shit, all of the deep, dark, nasty fucking stuff that I'd suppressed in my childhood, all of the anger, the pain, the guilt, the shame, the ridicule, all the nastiest, darkest stuff that was in me was in this child reflecting back to me. Feral, like wild, yeah. And I was going, he's going, spitting and fucking like a possession. It was fucking crazy. And then there's me, the adult me, going, it's all right, it's all right. And I'm trying to get hold of my inner child. And I'm going, it's okay, please, please, it's okay, I've got you, I've got you. And then eventually, like, it came to me, and I grabbed hold of myself, and I'm in the Maloka, and I am just like breaking down, like sobbing. Like I've never cried before for ages, like sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, just holding on to myself. And that night, I felt like when the next morning, I felt there was something had shifted. Yeah, and this is not me. I'm not. This is not an advertisement for ayahuasca, right? Everyone's got to do. You got to do what's right for you. Yeah, if it finds you and it feels right, then that's you. But I'm just telling you. For me, that was a very pinnacle moment in my life that was able to understand the depth of the pain and the suffering that I'd been carrying around with me, and how heavy that was on my life. And so I felt lighter after that, you know. And being the courageous young man that I am, I went and done it again and again and again and again, because I wanted to really get to the crux of it all.
Mm.
And so now, like, you know, I've explained now like this journey of who I am, right, and all of the stuff that I've learned along the way, and you know, I get it. I understand it, right? I get it. Yeah, I really get all of these different facets of our experience here, and now that how that like becomes interwoven in who we are today in the Danny you're seeing in front of you. And yet the thing that's come back to me, and I'll be really honest, is that I would say probably from Christmas onwards, I've been not taking care of myself in a way that is reflective of someone who is not showing themselves any value or any self-care or any self-worth or any self-love. Now, there's lots of other factors involved. Of course, we live in a fucking crazy world where we're all sort of like going, whoa, a lot of the time, whoa, this is a lot, and I am in the midst of a very ambitious project and stuff. So there are factors of stress and factors of worry and all of this stuff. But the thing came back to me very, very strongly recently when I felt that I'd found that something had shifted again. And the thing that came back to me was that I've had in the last few months, I've had quite a challenging relationship with my dad. I don't think he even knows about it because I'm not someone to talk about it. Like it's not like I'd ring him up and go, "Oh, Dad, like you hurt my feelings." It's not like that. We wouldn't do that. But there is a feeling to me of like not being loved. All right. And that's caused me a lot of internal sadness, and then again, I'm hearing that little boy come out. And it's actually what you said to me a few weeks ago on Myga that really, really went, whoa, like, why I've almost forgotten that again, like you were talking about your situation with your wife, Lynn's, and how that there was a desire for her to treat you differently and to almost like to love you more or to be more affectionate to you or be more whatever it is to you. Yeah. And ultimately you've realized that that is a reflection on how you feel about yourself. And hearing you say that it was like, oh my God, like I'm like that little boy again, like asking for my dad's validation and like to love me. And it's because I've stopped loving myself again. I've devalued myself. And how that sort of interacts in my life is like, it's difficult. It's really difficult, like it can be quite challenging because then I feel like there's a lot of, like that the way that sort of interacts then with my daily life and how that interacts with me and like the project we're doing. A lot of that is about, like, we've talked about this lots of times behind the scenes, haven't we, about the value of the project and why is that value, like, why is that so difficult to really connect with, that feeling of like the value of what we're doing is so externally, like, so like, wow, what a fucking thing we're doing. And yet I can't feel it, and probably 2 or 3 days ago, I was sitting with Hannah, and I'm in a bit of a really nice place in the sense of there's been such a cataclysmic shift in me in the last few weeks that idea of value is now on the forefront of my life, and I feel that I am constantly aware of that. And I'm investing in that. But because I'm investing in it, and like I said to Hannah the other day, I said, do you know what, darling? I started crying my eyes out. I said, you know what? This is the first fucking time in my life that I'm starting to feel my value in my entire life. And I remember, like, I'm a guy that I've always been, and this is not me being arrogant, but I've always been quite popular. I was like a pretty good actor who'd done some pretty large jobs and stuff where I had a lot of attention. I've always felt like I've had like people telling me that I've got value, but it means absolute fuck all unless you feel it yourself, And so this whole process to me has arrived like it's so synchronized because now tonight I'm here and it's like this is the conversation really is about value, It's about. And this it so lends itself to every single other person who's watching this and all of us. Like, we're all so interconnected around this issue. And if you look at the world and the state of the world, a lot of the time that is because people have they've foregone that fucking feeling of value and self-worth. So they can't, like, a lot of the time people ask me, like, how do we find our true voice? You know, how do we know that it's me directing that? How do I know that I'm navigating this? How do I know that I'm making that decision? How do I find my discernment? How do I locate that bit of myself that is me and is self-governing and self-authority? And it comes from how we feel about ourselves all the time. And so I just feel that, like, what a fucking ride. So look, that's it really. That's kind of all I wanted to get to, is that, like, the thing that I feel that is confronting me massively at the moment is my value. And I feel that that has got so much, it's so important for me to say that, because I'm me, right? And everyone looks at me a lot of the time, looks up to me, and I'm a bit on a pedestal because of the way I communicate and the way I am almost this sort of role model in the world at the moment. And it's so important for people to know that I have to go through it all the time as well, like everyone does, you know. And I would like to offer for the rest of this conversation tonight to discover what is that, like, what is stopping us from valuing ourselves, you know, and what kind of practices, or what can we change in our lives to be able to give ourselves more value? Because the more we do that, we're lifting it up, aren't we, for ourselves and then everyone else around us. So it is of utmost fucking importance.
Yeah. Anything else that feels right now like important for you to share?
Not really. No.
Cool. What, well, the thing, if you got to kind of say, kind of like in one sentence, if that's even doable, what you would like to get out from today, right? So like, kind of like, let's forget about everybody else on the call for a second. Let's just, like, what would be personally beneficial to you? Is there something that you say, like, you know what, that's still my struggle right now? Because you were talking about value, you were talking about self-worth. Is that something that for you is kind of like a very current thing that you struggle with, or is it something that now has shifted for you?
Well, when you said at the beginning, when we had our eyes closed, and you were saying, like, what are we trying? What is everyone trying to get out of this space tonight? And the thing for me was recognition,
Mm.
not from anyone else, but from myself, right?
Yeah.
To be able to see myself in it's my. This is going to sound really fucking cheesy now, but mine and everyone's got a song, haven't they? Every couple's got a song, but mine and Hannah's is "Better Man" by Paolo Nutini,
Mm.
which is the guy who was singing
How?
Iron Sky.
I didn't even know. See, so funny.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, that is Iron Sky is one of my favorite songs. It's
Right, right.
unbelievable. So
Oh,
fucking that album as well, Caustic Love, genius album.
right.
And one of the songs on it is called "Better Man."
Mhm.
And one of the lyrics in that, which always, whenever I hear it, makes me want to cry. It says that I want to see the reflection. I want to see the reflection of me in your eyes.
Mm.
And that is it, right? Is that, like, a lot of the time I can see how much love and respect the people around me who love me have got for me. I can see it in their eyes. My children, my wife, you guys, my friends, my mum, my dad.
Mm.
And I just I want that to be embodied in me. I want to take that, and I want to feel it, like,
Mm.
really feel it. And I do, right? In I often talk about a formula. Yeah, like, there is a formula to feeling good in this world. There is, yeah. Whatever's going on out there, there is a fucking formula. Don't ever get that twisted. There really is a formula. based on lots of different factors on what we do in our day-to-day lives and how we habitually go through life. And if I'm sort of starting off my day, which I have done consistently for the last few weeks, is I get up, I go straight off and I sit in silence. And when I'm in that silence, I'm feeling an immense amount of gratitude for myself, and I'm and to the whatever it is out there, source, whatever it is that created us. I'm so grateful for the from the creation that's made of me, you know. And when I'm investing in that, it's wonderful, and I'm in that moment. It's fucking wonderful. But then I come out of that moment, and then life comes and gets me again, and then all of a sudden, like the doubt comes back in, and the self sabotage comes back in, and the negative internal dialogue comes back in. And this is the interesting thing for me is that once upon a time I would have been able to go back and go sit there in traditional therapy and say, like, do you know what? I think that might have been when my dad used to shout at me and say this, or my mum used to, do, like, repeat this thing to me, and this built up this internal voice of criticism and judgment. However, knowing what I know now, I also think that there is a lot of other shit going on that traditional therapy is not able to fucking, like, to be able to give us a well-rounded idea of all the different factors. So, like, knowing that is sort of like, again, like, how do we like work through that as well? Like, how do we not pay attention to that voice, which it's been like fucking almost inherent in us for so many years of our lives, you know? That wasn't a sentence, was it?
No. So, I mean, are you open to some just reflection, some ideas, or just some back and forth and see where it goes?
Of course.
Cool. So certain things, right, that what you said is like, I think is so on the money, because that's also, just also kind of bringing some vulnerability for myself is um to explain to someone, like, what's the hearing heart like, and how is it, like, how, like, what's different from others, right? And it's sometimes so hard to put into words, but I think that's exactly it, where I have a sense it's like we're bringing something that probably is to be discovered, right? How to,
Mm,
like, really become that embodiment, like what you speak of, embodiment of this. I don't know if you want to call it self-mastery, where we come out like sovereign, like self-contained being, right? Where we just, like, we become the self-worth, like we become the embodiment of our nature, which I personally believe is love, even though that maybe sound a little bit, maybe a little bit cheesy. But I do think that when we are coming from our center, right, from our essence, from our core, which is very palpable what that feels like. And we are like in, our kind of makeup is we are here in this human form as a feeling and a sensing being. So I think emotions and what we create out of that is pretty much of what I think this project is about, right? Like
mm,
we wanted to create it from a very clear, from a very loving, with joy and with inspiration, right?
mm.
It's not coming from the place of like, oh, the world's fucked up. Now we need, like, and it comes out of fear and out of desperation when we go like, oh, now we must change it. That's not the energy I feel that we wanna bring. And just as we started, it's starting to pour down like cats and dogs outside. See? It's a cleanse, cleanse. Um, but so what I want to hone in on is what you shared with this. Well, sometimes you can't feel it, right? You were saying that, this self-reflection, and that this line really speaks to you, where you want to see your self-reflection in the other person. Um, and then also the idea, and maybe that can be like a very kind of like a small distinction, but and I've heard this in our conversations we've had sometimes when you put out videos or something, but from what I'm hearing, there is part of the inner narrative is, okay, like this voice, like, how do I not pay attention to it, right? Like
Mm.
you said it just then. Well, how do we not pay attention to that voice?
Mm,
right? That's to that sabotaging, to that negative, to that inner narrative that somehow derails us, that somehow gets us kind of off into a different direction that may not be in our highest and greatest good.
mm.
And to me, that's exactly what you were describing was happening on ayahuasca, right? So again, that would be kind of like, oh, the feral kid that, like, how do I not pay attention to the feral kid?
Mm.
Is that something that resonates, or am I talking out of my ass here?
No, I think it's do you know what? It's funny, right? Because you say that because after the MIGA, that when I had that moment, based on what you had said about how that was something that you were feeling inside, right? And I sat here and I was I had a half a joint left and a and a glass of wine, and I sat here and finished that, and I was like, oh, I got to write. I had this feeling to write, and one of the things that I wrote down, which I think is here somewhere, because I've got a really my desk is like my mind is fucking stuff everywhere. Yeah, that was the thing, right? It was that it was to remember the playfulness of little Danny.
Hmm.
And based on that, right, based on just writing that, I had this feeling like, why have I lost that connection with that little boy? Why have I lost that connection? It's almost because it's too. A lot of sometimes it's probably it feels too big to be able to listen to him. It's too much. It's too much pain to uncover in one go. Because it's like it's years, isn't it? It's years. Or in a child, a lot of the time, depending on our lives, we've all got different lives and had different upbringings and stuff. But I feel like a lot of us, even if your childhood wasn't necessarily as dramatic as some people's, I feel that just based on our parenting, the way it was handed down from stuff, we've never really been recognised, in our sort of entirety, and I think we've all got that feeling. Not everyone, but a lot of people I speak to have got that feeling of that. There's sort of like there's work to be. Not work is the wrong word, but there's attention to
Hmm.
be given to
Hmm.
that space of the inner child. There's love that needs to be shined down there. And for me, it's just a case of like, how do you do that though? As an adult, how do you do that? Like, what do I do? Like, do I start going to go down the park and jump on the monkey bars and swing around, and then everything's going to be all right?
Yeah.
you know, it's to me, it's sort of something that is these kind of conversations. My inner child's hearing that now, isn't he?
Hmm.
It's based on this is an attention to that episode, to that sort of that loss.
Yeah.
And I suppose that is one of the things for me that is the sadness, is that like I felt like because I grew up so fucking quickly, like honestly, Swish, yeah, like I take Hannah, my girl, I take her as someone who I can say that has got like a middle of the road sort of childhood, yeah, like sort of middle class, very sort of secure, like not without problems, but sort of like very sort of like sheltered and secure and stability and stuff like that. When I tell her some of the things that happened to me in my childhood, and I'm not going to go into them tonight, but like it's like a movie, yeah, it's like a film. Like to normal people, it's like a fucking film. And I grew up in that, and I feel like a lot of the time there was so much stuff going on that I never had a childhood. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
I feel like there's a real sadness that I never really got a chance just to fucking to run around without any. I had like an old man, middle-aged man's worries on my fucking the worries that I've got now.
Hmm.
I had them when I was 6.
Hmm.
And to me, that's fucking like, how do I get that back? I'm never getting that back, am I? Do you know what I mean? I've got, and the thing is to then, is like, how do I make peace with that? How do I accept that?
Hmm.
Is it a case of going back again to my mum and dad? Because I don't really believe in that either. Like putting the blame at, oh, it was your fault. I don't believe in any of that. I'm someone, as you know, I own it. Like I own everything. That all my behaviour is mine, and no one's taking that away from me.
Yeah.
So for me, it's just a case of like it's trying to work through like a level of acceptance for that, and just to sort of forgive myself, forgive all the other parties within that. But that's not a day's work, is it? That's not a hearing heart episode. You know, that's something that's just going to take probably a lifetime.
Hmm. Okay. So there is also a bit of an anger that's there, it seems. Would that be
Oh yeah, of course, it's me.
right? Right. So there's
Yeah,
grief
yeah.
and sadness about a childhood that, you would have liked to have, or that you imagine now, because back then it was just what was.
Mm.
Right. So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 6-year-old never thought, like, oh, like my life should be different. Like I shouldn't be, I shouldn't be that. Or were you already, that kind of aware at that age?
Yeah, I mean, like my stuff that was going on in my life, I was pretty aware that that wasn't going on in a lot of other kids' lives.
Right.
But I also like, I grew up in sort of council estates of London, so like there was, like it was standard that lots of people were going much worse situations than mine as well, much worse experiences.
Hmm.
But still, that I think the thing for me is that the solace that I take from it now is how I am as a father.
Mm.
And that to me is there's a reparation there, in my own childhood, and I do often like I'm a man who wears his heart on his sleeve. Like the amount of times my kids see me cry, is like as soon as I don't stop myself, I feel like I want to cry. I fucking cry. I don't care who's there. I'm not. It's not something that I believe is something to be disproven of or like someone looked down on. Like it's just one of our emotions. But I often see that my children, the way they're playing, the way that they've got freedom, the way they've got very, very safe boundaries within their lives, that I've sometimes feel a great sadness come up in me
Mm.
because I never had that.
Right.
I was always full of fear.
Right.
And sometimes, like look, let's just be honest, cards on the table. I'm still fucking fallible, as much as I am very aware and I'm very, very full of ownership of my behavior and I'm able to apologize. I'm still fallible. I
Welcome
know
to
that.
humanity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so there's elements of the way that I talk sometimes to my children, and I'm I'm instilling that fear that I had in them. Like things like, "Oh, careful, careful! What are you doing?" And of course, look, of course, there has to be. We have to lay certain boundaries around our children because that's what we're doing. Like we're the guiders of their lives for when they're little and they don't really know what the world. Otherwise, they get run over every fucking week. But it's the energy how you do it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, right? And when I'm acting out of this space where I've got that fear or like I'm identified with that fearful internal dialogue,
Yeah.
then it's not coming from a space that is healthy,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. So two things you mentioned that kind of have my ears perk up, and you tell me which one feels kind of more on the money. You said that, well, it feels a bit like too big to listen to, the little boy that, probably still carries some hurt, some fear, some doubts. And then you also said, or you said like, well, I've lost that connection with this playfulness,
Mm,
right? Which kind of go hand in hand.
mm,
And also there is, just an idea is, in my view, playfulness and kind of a joyful existence again is part of our natural makeup.
mm,
I think the playfulness and the joy emerges as a result of the work that we're doing, right? The internal, the forgiveness that we bring to the parts that we've judged, that we
mm.
kind of shun, that we've like pushed away, right? And so if you're speaking to that, well, there's an aspect of you that feels almost too big, right? Too overwhelming because of, well, what may come out.
A little bit, but like I've done a lot of work on that
Mhm.
in a child, yeah. Like I've like not only in terms of you know, like most traditional therapy, that's where they want to go anyway, right? So, I've sat and talked to my mum and dad about it, especially my mum. You know, my mum was in that field in her career as well. So me and my mum have like really deep conversations and cry together, and we have a real sort of open dialogue about any of of my childhood. And my mum's apologized profusely, my dad's apologized about, like, so there's an element of like, it's an openness around that discussion.
Mhm.
For me, it's not, and I've gone into the depths of that, into like into the sadness of that, and I've allowed it to come out, and I've cried and I've cried and I've cried, but sometimes it feels like it's just a little bit boring,
Mm.
you know, like it's almost like too repetitive. It's
Mhm.
what this again? Fucking hell, you know, we got to go there again, have we? You know, and I feel that, like I said before, is that there's a very thin line between us being able to recognize and forgive and accept all that stuff and not be swallowed up by it
Mm.
and identify with it too strongly. And then all of a sudden, that is just another program running, then, and we've become a victim, and there's all this other stuff going on. So that's another interesting take on it, right? Is that we have to navigate that, you know, to make sure we're not going too far over to like, oh, poor me, my childhood, oh, my life, but also not going, oh yeah, I'm all right, and I'm fine. There's a thin line there, you know, and I feel a lot of the time when I'm in my most quietest, especially when I write, you know, when I'm writing, I feel like that level of creativity is very intrinsically connected to my inner child, which is interesting because I touched on this at the beginning. Is I do this thing called writing, which is cry writing. So it's almost like there is a therapeutic process that goes on within me, you know, within that. And yeah, I mean, like I just feel like that's our life, right? A lot of the time, that's our life. We're very much, we're aware of it, you know, and we have lots and lots of opportunities, luckily enough, with lots of like platforms like this springing up all over the place, that give people the space to delve into that conversation and to do it in a place which is it feels very protected here, to say what I want, you know, and to be really held by everyone, and like everyone, it feels like there's an army right with me now, you know, and I feel that whenever I do facilitate for the hearing heart as well. So I just the thing is that sometimes the knowing, yeah, knowing what it is also a fucking program running, and it's just a lot of the time it's the being and the doing in that space that kind of allows that playfulness to come out. Because like again, and I do genuinely feel like I've had a monumental shift in the last few weeks. But I mean, I have them often. I'm sure
Mhm.
everyone else does. Like there's another layer, and you're like, oh wow, I got it, and you go, oh
Mm.
fuck, I haven't got it. Oh bang, another layer, oh, I got it. Oh, I haven't got it. And I've had one of those big monumental shifts in the last few weeks, and I felt that playfulness. I felt it with my kids. I'm fucking swinging them around and playing with them, and me and Hannah are like kids, like teenagers, bantering and taking the piss out of each other. And it all just feels like, whoa, very, very easy, you know.
Mhm.
But there's still an element of me when I'm sitting there on my own, when I can feel that self doubt come back again, and I can feel that like that question of worthiness, that question of my value comes back to me, echoes back to me all the time.
Mm. What's the story of the value then? What's the
No, I'm not good
narrative?
enough.
Not good enough.
Yeah,
Okay. Does it have any other flavors? Is that
pistachio.
pistachio not good enough?
um, does it have any other flavors? I'm not good enough.
Does it say like in what, like
In what context?
is that the way that you hear it? Well, like here we go again, I'm just not good enough. Or like how does it show up?
Well, I mean, look, if I've said it, but lots of times I've been very open about it. Is like when a lot of the time when I'm in that space, when I'm not present or I'm not really Danny, whatever that means,
Mm.
then I'm listening to like a proper fucking, you know, radio station of people voices shouting abuse,
Right,
insults of
right.
like, you know, like
Yeah,
almost to the point where it's like being in a fucking mental asylum and you're
yeah,
just getting shouted at constantly.
right.
And a lot of the time that is it becomes it becomes sort of like I don't even focus on that and attend to that when it's not even there. I'm able to just push it away. Like I'm not even push it away. It just doesn't have any fucking substance to my life when I feel like I feel right now.
Right.
However, when I'm in another space, I'm hearing that, and that's sort of
Hmm.
like bang, 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 bang,
Yeah, yeah,
bang.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Right. Okay. Can I shorten that and just say I'm not enough?
Yeah,
Okay. Does that is that the same or does that have a slightly different feel for you?
it's the same.
It's the same? Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Um, one thing that just like keeps popping in is the idea. Oh, someone's still coming in. Here we go. Something that keeps popping in for me is the idea around intrinsic worth and wholeness, right? And I mean, I don't know like Oracle Girl's work like in details, but from the little that you share with me, and also some of the words that you're using, I think you used like, ah, we're like kind of like this multidimensional being,
Mm.
right? And when you're writing, um, or when you're coming from that clear space where it's not, where you know where the voices aren't going haywire and there's not like this mental asylum in your head,
Mm.
that is a quality that feels like very steady, very grounded, very kind of like centered, right? Where you feel like, oh, that's who I am at my
Mm.
as my nature, as my essence,
Mm.
right? And so the other thing, you know, the let's call it like the little boy or the 6 year old and what comes with that, that's part of the personality.
Mm.
If I say personality, does that make sense to you, or would it be okay for me to share a little bit what I think that is?
Yeah, I mean, but personality, that's like a very, it's quite general, isn't it? Like,
Right, right. So what I mean by that, at least the way that I understand it, to me, the personality is kind of all the programs that are running, all the basically out of fear and hurt, we create the mechanisms, the coping, the some people call it ego, some people call it like the inner child, right? Or like multiple inner child or children, but they're always there to protect. But they're not like who we are because fundamentally their nature is one of limitation because they tell us a story, the narrative that is kind of confined in a certain universe that's based in fear and scarcity and inadequacy,
mm,
right? So for example, like if the story goes or one of the narrative that says like, well, I'm not enough or I'm not good enough, right? I can go and turn it around and say like, well, but I am enough. Right? No, no, I'm good. I'm really like a great guy, right? And that's a better story, yet it still lives in the world. It still lives in the confines of, well, but there's a possibility that I could go back and go like, oh, but now I'm not good enough anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Because now like all those doubts come in, right?
yeah, yeah.
So kind of like another someone that I find is really good once said it in that way. He said like, well, we're trying, or like often we try to become the best version of our limited self,
Mm,
right? So a part of what you're sharing to me feels a bit like there is kind of like this in and out, kind of like one foot in, well, this is who I am as my essence, as my multidimensional being, as my spirit self, as my soul, right? But then also I have those time where I kind of go back into program where like these voices come. It's kind of like back and forth, right? That's why I'm
mm,
talking about the embodiment and
mm,
feeling as though, oh, like how do I really embody that side of the equation even more
mm,
so that I become the place, the space, the essence where all of that is actually allowed and can come up without feeling overwhelmed, without thinking that I'm now identified again with that part, right? That
mm,
feels less than, that feels I'm not enough, that feels, well, somehow something wrong with me for whatever reason,
mm,
right? And one of the metaphors that I keep using, especially when it comes to the intrinsic worth, is the one of the sun and its rays. And I don't know if you've heard that before. I frequently share it on the
Yeah,
Healing
yeah.
Heart. Yeah. So right, and for maybe for anybody who hasn't heard that, the I call it the big four, right? And the big four to me are like intrinsic worth, equality, uniqueness, and wholeness, like those four. And whenever there is a story of, well, I'm not enough, I'm somehow less than, I'm missing something, I'm broken, they always speak to the limited version of ourselves. And it's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, we're kind of limiting ourselves because we feel we need to be protected because of what's underneath that, right? Underneath that is maybe the anger, is the sadness, is all that stuff that come up that we feel like, oh, like, but if I let that come up, it's too big. Like I can't even handle that.
Mm.
And the idea with the sun, right, with the intrinsic worth is like, well, if you think of the sun as this ball, and I mean, that's a conversation for another time. Is it not? Like, who knows? It's so
It's an
funny.
egg yolk.
It's an
That's what
egg
it
yolk.
is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was so funny because I just had this conversation with someone else, and and we're just like, well, I don't even know what's real anymore, right? And then I brought up this thing. I was like, well, it's like, let's just go with like, okay, let's just conceptualize it as the sun with rays, right?
Mm.
So otherwise, it doesn't work. The metaphor doesn't work. Um, but so, right, the idea is that we're moving from the fear-based right-wrong reality, which like you and I have discussed this before, and we
Mm,
move into the place where we're starting from the place of like, no, I'm already like whole and complete, and I'm intrinsically worthy, right? That's my starting point, and there is no like, and then we play a completely different game. Like we're
mm,
not even on the same court.
mm,
So and with the intrinsic worth, the idea would be, well, if I have the sun and it has its rays, well, would the sun go, well, that ray over there, like, that has a lot of worth, but that guy over there, I'm not sure. Like this guy's maybe like half shines only half bright,
mm,
right? So like that would be like a nonsensical thing. It's kind of like, no, everybody gets the same, right? And at the same time, like each ray or each sun ray is contained in and of itself. Like they're all in a way the same, but also they shine all in a slightly different direction, which is why every ray is also unique. We're all equal, but they're unique and they have intrinsic worth just by the fact that they're existing.
mm.
So if the narrative is like, I'm not good enough or I'm not enough, at least part of that is again rooted in the idea or is kind of like identified with that version that tries to protect us from whatever's underneath that. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, but it is, yeah, and I get that. But the thing is that like a lot of the time I'm not in that place, so I'm very aware of my value. I'm very aware that of that we've got nowhere to go as well, right? I say it all the time. There's no work to do. It's just about uncovering a lot of the time. It's just about allowing that stuff to fall away,
Right.
and then I find that we're in this sort of almost like we then become the conductor, the conduit of like of what it is coming
Right.
through us,
Yeah.
and that to me is it's actually like it's a neutrality, like we become neutral then, and there's sort of like there's no need to go off any other way because we're just very sort of stuck and grounded.
Right.
And when like a lot of the time people when they talk about me, they say like you come across, you feel very grounded, like you're very. I would say I am very one of my greatest skills, my greatest attributes is I'm incredibly definite. So that's completely fucking paradoxical to the idea of like not knowing and being all this other stuff. But it's like two different radio stations playing, isn't it? And when I feel like I do at the moment, like I feel that there's nothing that can stop me, and I'm back into that feeling of like excitement and enthusiasm and fucking like, oh my god, this is a wonderful feeling.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you end up going back
Yeah.
into the shadows, which I never look away from because I'm
Yeah.
very aware that it's brought me to here, to this conversation today. So there's so much value there,
Right.
and it's just, I suppose it's just a case of sort of to understand that again, with everything, it comes back to how we feel about ourselves and
Yeah.
how do we listen to
Yeah.
that part of ourselves and give it the attention it deserves to be able to say, we hear you. All
Yeah.
right. I hear your
Right.
pain. I
Right.
recognize your pain. All right.
Yes.
But you're okay now. You're safe.
Right.
You're safe. It's okay to feel it. It's okay to be it. It's okay to express it.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. There's no criticism. Your behavior, your tears, whatever it is, let it all come out. And we hear you and we see you and we recognize you.
Right.
know? And to
Right.
me, that is really what makes it whole again. And then we're sort of like we're the full part then, right?
Right.
Because we're not shutting anything off.
Right. But that's the thing. I think we already are that, right? There is
Mm.
nothing, the illusion is that we're not, and that we need to do this type of work and this conversation so that we become whole.
I know.
And I think that's the
It's the
pitfall.
paradox, mate. Yeah, it's
Well,
fucking trippy.
but I think it's not. It's just like the illusion is very strong,
Mm.
right? That we got to do something in order for us to feel worthy, to feel valued.
Yeah, so we can turn
Which
that program off, right?
Right, but the way we turn it off is not by ignoring it, it's not by pushing it away. It's just what you said, right?
Yeah,
It's just what you said. It's like, no, like actually we turn towards it. And I
yeah.
think that's something that is just slightly different, at least from what I know of therapy. It's very often there is a sense of, well, how, like one way is like, oh, let's just let it go,
Mm.
right? And I'm like, well, but that does not, like, who wants to be let go of? No one, especially not the parts that hurt and that are in pain. That means death to them. Like how, like, well, this is the whole crux from the beginning because we didn't give attention, we didn't turn towards them and we tried to somehow overcome the thing that they're feeling
Mm.
by, distracting, by whatever it is that we do. So right? If we're coming from the place of like, I'm already whole and complete and I'm intrinsically worthy by the fact that I was born a human, right? It's a birthright, and there is nothing that I can do or say or change that would ever make that different.
Mm.
So it's something that you come here pre-installed with. But the illusion on this planet, I think, is, well, let's see how far away we can get from it so we can realize and we can go back to noticing and knowing in our hearts that, well, that's our nature. Our nature is intrinsic worth.
Mm.
Our nature is we're being whole and complete already. There is
Mm.
nothing for us to add, and we come here seated with everything that we could ever need. And
And
if
then
those stories come up, right, to like where the hurt and the painful parts speak up, this is where, and you shared it before as well, this is where we can bring forgiveness and compassion. Because that's
mm.
also something I think that as a humans we come here, we have this kind of innately in our nature. Like we have access to forgiveness, we have access to compassion. And with that energy, like we can overcome anything.
And the interesting thing for me, right, is that it shows up for me with my stories and my narrative. Yeah. It shows up for you in your stories and your narrative. But ultimately, it's all the fucking same.
It's all the same.
It's all the same.
Right.
And we're all doing it for each other as well. This is the
Right.
thing. We're so interconnected with this same thing all the time, is that like we are, and to loosely use what Jacqueline says about a purification.
Mm.
It's that's what we're doing here. We're almost like these fucking vehicles, these vessels, filters that are filtering all this shit. And somehow we've created these narratives and these identities and these stories, and we've made it into this big thing. And that, to me, is why this space is so different to traditional therapy, because the traditional therapy that wants to explain all those stories, that wants to
Right.
analyze, evaluate, and keep
Yeah.
fucking taking
Yes.
your money
Right.
week in, week out
Right.
to go down into those rabbit holes, into those stories, to
Yeah.
where, to nowhere.
And
You
that's
know?
what I mean by the personality, because I think what's and again, like, that's no slight, because I know lots of people who have like received a lot of value from therapy, and I'm not
I
like
did,
poo-pooing. Yeah,
I
exactly.
did,
Like
yeah,
I
yeah,
did
I did,
myself, right? So
yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's nothing there's nothing bad or wrong with it. Yet also I think that there is an important and a crucial part missing in that they're playing on the field of the personality, right?
Mm,
Of the programs, of the kind of like, let's try to to maximize or to improve on the limitations that
Yeah.
we're in. But I think what, at least that's my kind of mission, or like my commitment, is like, no, 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 like that's the limitation. We want to be out of that because
Yeah.
we want to start from, no, we're already whole and complete, intrinsically worthy, unique and equal.
Mm.
Right. And if we start from that, and I keep saying it, and maybe, it, yeah, I want to finish that sentence. And I keep saying that to the degree that I can embody those, right, by bringing forgiveness and compassion to the parts and in the moment when those parts are up, right, in the
Mm.
moment where I don't feel enough, in the moment when I feel like, oh, I'm not accepted, just, like as you were sharing, right? So last year was just it was a big shift for me where I realized that I was looking for acceptance from mostly my wife, but also from other people, right? But she's so close to me, and like I have a very good friendship on top of the relationship with her. She's just the closest person to me. So then
Safe
it
as well.
was safe, right?
Yeah.
And so it showed up in very like small but still significant ways, right? Where I'm want her to see me, or and I'm not saying like she doesn't see me, but I'm saying like in a way that is needy, that feels less than like, please validate me and please
Validate. Yeah.
validate my experience,
Mm.
right? Like, please accept me just the way I am,
Mm.
right? But again, like all the things that I want from the other person, in my case was my wife, it's the same. It's how I treat myself,
Mm.
right? And if I like hypothetically get it from her, then the switch is like, oh, I guess I can now give it to myself, because it's never with them. It's always me. It's always within me,
Mm.
right? Um, and I think that's you know, to kind of maybe also answer a bit more, maybe your question, or at least my experience on that, was because you asked like, well, how do I do this? Like, how do I make that happen, right? How do I
Mm.
embody that more? Because you also said that, well, it's maybe just a lifelong thing. And just from my personal experience, and where I've been, a couple of years ago,
Mm.
like, not I was never at the point where I was suicidal, but I can understand why people, like, really understand why people would say like, well, this is it, like, I'm going, like, this is
I've
not,
had enough. Yeah.
I had enough, right? I can't take
Mm.
this. Like, I get
Mm.
that. Um, and to me, what really helped is just like step by step, like each moment, each time, like to have the commitment to myself of like, however long it takes, it doesn't matter. But each time when a part comes up, when the narrative goes, I'm not enough, when the narrative goes like, oh, please see me, and the narrative goes, please hear me.
Mm.
Whenever that happens, for me, then to just take a moment to be present with that, right? And that's already what you're saying and what you're doing. And to me, having the statements that we're talking about, right, the forgiveness statements, I think you've heard them before, I assume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right,
Please say them.
right. Yeah, I can we can probably just use it on one of your statements, where just doing that over time, like, really shifts me out of the fear paradigm, out of the not
Mm.
enough, of the inequality, of the like insecurity and inadequacy, moves you bit by bit, and it's, to me at least, it's a very gradual shift, right? For
Mm.
some people, and I think that's what's so alluring with ayahuasca, where there's like, you kind of like, you start there, right? And you go like down into the deep dark stuff, and like, you like, everything comes up and you go like, bleh. And there is that moment, at least for me, that's been the case, hence why I did it so many times, because then you feel like, oh, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the visceral experience of what's available to me,
Yes.
at least,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
then, but because I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the repetitions, I would just like, after, at least at the most, I think the longest I could hold on to it was like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then it would just go back.
Yeah.
And that's what the kind of like, it was like, well, but that's not the solution. Well, it took me, I don't know, 30 odd whatever sessions to figure that out. Right? Like, well, maybe the next session will just keep me there.
Yeah.
Right. But that, again, I'm super grateful for that, because like it actually, you put you on the path of like, no, you can do this every single day, just bit by bit by bit, 5 minutes there, 2 minutes there, sit down
Mm.
for 15 minutes and just
Mm.
take that time. And over time, like you just find yourself more and more in that space where it's like,
mm,
oh, I like one thing that so helped me so much is just I love and accept myself no matter what. That's but just
mm,
become my mantra.
mm,
I love and accept myself no matter what. And the no matter what part has been super challenging
mm,
because the no matter what means that, well, even the parts that I find unacceptable, right? Even the parts that I find like, oh my God, like I don't even know, like this is so heinous or this is so disgusting, so bad, so I feel so guilty about that one thing or that multiple things I did. I'm so full of shame.
mm,
All those things, even those, even those are acceptable.
mm.
And I think that's the challenge, right? Because to go there and to go like, oh, I can even be a place for space for those.
Yeah. But for me, is that there's a very, very big difference to thinking that and feeling it.
Right.
And when I feel it, which I feel like I have been the last few weeks, of when I'm sitting in silence, and silence is a wonderful tool to be able to really like attend to that part of yourself. When I feel it, I'm like there's something happens to me, which I know then that I am a physical representation of source.
Right.
Yeah, I know that, and I can feel it, and I'm bouncing, and everything that comes out of my mouth is
Yeah.
patience and fucking, it's all there.
Right.
And the more I think the thing is the crux of it is that the more we attend to that place, the more we invest in that relationship, it just becomes more habitual, and then
Right.
and then that all that other stuff, it just starts to fade off into the distance.
That's it. And I think that's why it's super challenging because it potentially takes a while.
And I'm fucking impatient.
Right. Listen, I mean, I think it's such a common thing, right? Such a common experience. And look, I mean, I'm still like fully on this journey, right? Even though like you and I have this conversation, even though, we're hosting some of these spaces, like just as you are, like I'm exactly the same, right? I have my shit, I have my stuff that I get to just yesterday, just last night. I was up and I was like, oh, okay, I think I got to write some stuff down because something came up,
Yeah.
right? So
But that's one of the beauties about this space, though,
I
Swiss,
know,
right? Is that there's no
of
fucking
course,
authority here. There's no
no,
hierarchy,
no, exactly, right? But I think that, the people that I don't feel drawn or like feel there's some value that we're sharing, I think that these are also the people who I feel like have tried a lot of other things and it just hasn't really yet sunk in or really yet worked. So
Mm,
I think also like part of what we're doing here is to kind of, just bring up some different ideas or some different perspectives so that we can again just stand in our own power, in our own greatness. That's why it's called
mm,
Make Yourself Great Again.
yeah.
We're always great, but I think we just temporarily forget and then we remind ourselves again.
Mm.
Um, what would be supportive for you just now to kind of bring it back? We're riffing a little bit, but what would be, is there something that you find maybe helpful for you at this time?
No, not really. I feel everything. The whole conversation has been incredibly beautiful. Very. It feels like it's created a harmony within that dialogue between me and my little self, which is a harmony that I'm often connecting with a lot, myself. But I mean, tonight to be able to bring that up and to feel that stuff again, and then be feeling it settle, and just to sort of like almost like I say, is to be seen again. Yeah, not me being seen, but the part of me that's in
Yeah,
the shadows, the little boy, the feral child.
right. Feral child, yeah,
Yeah.
right,
So yes, yeah, it feels very harmonious.
right. Would you be open to just take one example that we that you can use just going forward, just for your own personal gain?
Yeah, I mean, just I think that was very the end of that sentence of I love and accept myself no matter what,
Hmm.
because like I say, like I have within that experience, my life experience as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, as an adult, I've done some pretty fucked up things,
Mm,
and there is. I was talking to my kids about it 2 minutes before I walked over here, and I was explaining about like our actions in life have consequences, and there's still stuff that I carry with me today that I'm in the process of trying to forgive myself for things that I've
mm,
done.
mm,
And there's normally that's been born out of a violent or a rage-filled episode where I've lost control.
mm,
And I'm happy to say that never happens anymore. I'm
mm,
I'm quick to be able to fucking defend myself. Don't worry about that. But like in the sense that I'm always in control, and there's a very strong calmness about me now.
mm,
So, but to be able to shine a light on some of that, and that sentence is very, very beneficial and valuable to me to move forward with, to remember that, that like all of
mhm.
it. It's okay, all of it.
Right. One thing, and then we can probably come to a close soon. So I did say before about the kind of the big four, right? Which were
Mm,
the intrinsic worth, like I'm equal to everybody else, the equality, and also I'm unique. So what I bring, my own experience of life, my own being, the way that I show up, my energy is unique. And
mm,
also we're already whole and complete. Now there's a fifth one that I often don't mention, but I think maybe quite fitting, right? Which is innocence.
mm,
So that from the perspective of our being, or from the perspective of that center, that essence, the idea that we're innocent regardless of what we have or haven't done in our life, which I guess for someone that feels maybe carries some guilt or some shame about past actions, is where the idea about right wrong comes in very strongly,
mm.
right? And so and kind of like the right wrong again lives in the space of fear and inadequacy, and oh, this wasn't okay the way it
Yeah, I
was,
shouldn't have
right?
done that.
Shouldn't have,
Yeah.
right? I've done something bad, right?
Mm.
Something like, well, I'm a bad person, or I'm bad. um so what would, like, if you just tried that on for a second, if you were to come from a place, from the energy at least, of saying like, well, I've done things that maybe haven't been good, or maybe there have been some real consequences of some of the actions I took. But on the grand scheme of things, as my being, as my life's path, there is, I've been innocent, and I came here innocent, and there is always an innocence to me that cannot be touched. How would that, how does that feel to you?
Yeah, it feels very nice. It feels like a weight off my shoulders, you know. But there's also something else I can hear in my head is saying that like, where does the ownership come in then?
Right.
Like if we're just gonna run around and do what the fuck we like, and we're gonna fuck other people's lives up, and we're saying that don't, no, I'm innocent, it's not me, like where does the ownership fit into that? So again, I think
Right.
it's a very thin line, and it's whether we're using that from a place of purity,
Yes.
where we actually believe in that sentiment of that I am innocent
Yeah.
because I there was nothing that was premeditated. I didn't go out my way to harm people. I didn't go out my way to do these
Yeah.
things. Then yeah, then that feels very nice. It feels very
Right.
comforting.
Yeah. So to me, right, just also maybe speaking a bit as a friend, like your life's work, the way that you are is the ownership. Like the way that you show up in life and what you're offering, that's the ownership of whatever happens in the past, whatever happened, what didn't happen, right? And if the idea is that today my ownership is carrying this guilt, right, that's my way of kind of repaying or trying to right a perceived wrong. Maybe that time is not, maybe that isn't doing a service to anybody.
Makes sense.
What do you think would become available if the idea or the knowingness of innocence had just bit by bit kind of added a little bit more like not presence, but would become a little bit more expanded in your life? If that idea just took bit by bit more hold on you.
Becomes a little bit more tangible, you mean, yeah?
Mm,
Well, I think then the innocence is so beautifully connected to the playfulness,
mm,
to the freedom. The real freedom for me really is living from that space of when we were kids and we didn't know what fear was.
right.
You know?
Yeah. And isn't that so that the kids, I mean, aren't they the embodiment of that innocence?
Oh, are they?
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't even have my own kids, but I can see that, right? You
Yeah.
have three beautiful little angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that little, the part of you that feels, this, maybe that guilt or that heaviness or that sadness, if you also could shower him with the knowingness of his innocence,
Mm,
may also just add
mm,
a bit more lightness, a bit more would allow him maybe to come out of his, you know,
mm, mm.
like what did you say, trap door, or like what was it where you found the first time there?
Yeah, trapdoor, fucking
Right,
attic. I don't know what it
right,
was.
yeah,
But yeah, it does. It does feel it brings it, it invites a real yeah, a real feeling of I don't know, like lightness, you
mm,
know. It makes it feel so much less of a bit burden of guilt, you
right,
know.
yeah,
Mm.
right,
Yeah, it's nice.
nice,
It's a good take on it.
yeah. What do you want to take away from today?
Um, what do I want to take away from today? I suppose just to be more forgiving is the main thing I can feel right now. It's just to forgive myself for all that stuff. A lot of the time, it's just fucking survival, isn't it? You know, in the jungle. And I do believe, you know, like, and this is something I'm incredibly strongly always believe is that a lot of my fucking skills, a lot of my resilience, a lot of my power comes from the fact that I was in a predicament. It's also got a lot to do with who I am, my natural design, and stuff like that. But I feel like I've learnt a lot. And I say that to my kids. I go, do you know why I'm so fucking wise? Because I've made so many fucking mistakes. And so there's something in that as well, right? Is that like to forgive that all that stuff because it's got me to it's who I am,
Right,
all of it.
yeah. And I think this is the ownership,
Yeah.
right? It's not only ownership of the things that, we judge ourselves for, but it's actually no, but that's fully me,
Mm,
right? The learning and
mm,
growing of it, which
mm,
made you the man that you are today. Which to me again, like, is the testament of who you show up as today, like what you're creating in the world is the ownership.
mm.
You could have gone down a very different path.
Oh mate. Like, I mean, if you there's yeah, I mean,
It would have
if
been
I look,
like super easy to go down a
yeah, yeah.
different
Oh
path, right?
yeah. Oh, Swiss. I don't know how. I really
Exactly.
sometimes sit there and I do not know how I survived it.
Right.
Like when I look at all the people I grew up with, my brothers, my cousins, everyone, and I see that there's an element of like very, very challenging situations in their lives now, adult lives, where they're not in control, or they're struggling with very, very, and listen, we're all struggling to a degree, but I feel like most of my life I'm pretty I have feelings of contentment and happiness and
Right.
joy, and I've got an incredible mission.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time I say this often in my expression is that when we arrive at the why, I think it was Mark Twain who said that the
Mm.
two most important days of our life are when we are born and when we find out why.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, that is so like when you've got older. And I was talking to a guy who was out here, the guy who's shooting the documentary on us.
Hmm.
He was saying that to me. He was like, "Mate, you don't know, you don't realize how rare that is in
Mm.
the world when you when
Hmm.
you arrive at the why. Like, why are
Yeah.
you here?"
Yeah.
And I know sporadically that takes on different directions and narratives along the way. But when it's like you feel that the feeling of the
Mm.
why,
Mm.
I mean, it becomes sort of like it's quite life becomes a lot less. Um, it becomes a lot more transparent and a lot
Yeah.
less sort of chaotic.
Right.
You know.
And this is what you just said to me sounds like one of the things what you said, like you wanted to have self-recognition.
Mm,
To me, that speaks to that self-recognition.
mm.
Are you open for a small challenge at the end?
Can I keep my clothes on?
Well, you may. I mean, you can also take them off if you want. If you will,
Yeah.
um, spend 1 minute of validating and recognizing yourself for
I'm taking my clothes off, Swiss.
all right, all right. It's get hot in here now.
Sorry, go on.
So, just whatever feels right, just for you to actually see the parts of you and see how far you have come, and just recognizing like the incredible man that you have become, and just speak it out loud if you want to. It's an offer. You don't have to, but if you want to.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak it out loud,
Okay.
but I feel like I can internalize what you're saying,
Yeah.
and so I'm happy to spend a moment doing that.
Beautiful. Okay. Good.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah, baby. And take that with you.
Yes, mate. Thank
All
you.
right. You're
Thank
welcome.
you, Swiss. It's been a really a beautiful reflection coming back at me, mate. I appreciate that.
Nice. Wonderful. All right. Well, let's bring everybody else back on. So anybody who's still on the call, please turn your cameras back on. Thanks so much, my friend. I'm gonna mute you and take you off the hot seat. You can
Thank you
take
very
off your
much.
clothes. All right, everyone. Welcome back. Beautiful. All right, let's just take a moment and just remind ourselves what was important for us personally. Maybe something that was said, maybe something that was written in the chat. I haven't even looked at anything. Maybe something that Danny said or that I said. And just take that with you. for the rest of the week and possibly the rest of your life. Who knows? Um, and also, we would love to maybe hear from one, two, three people if anybody wants to share what was important to them. And I always, at this point, I always say this is not the time to speak to Danny directly or let him know what you think or what he, maybe should have remembered or whatever that was. But it's now a time for you to share how it touched you or what was important for you. Because often when we hear and see someone else go through their own process, it resonates with the parts in us that we find challenged by or that we have a hard time with. And this is the time, if you want to share parts of that with us. So if there's anybody who would like to say something, please, you can just put up your hand. Can just at the bottom there is a raise hand option. So if somebody wants to share something, then put up your hand and then we'll put you in the spotlight. I'm going to give you a few minutes or few moments. Johan, okay, go. Wonderful. Hello.
Hello there.
Great. We can hear you. Perfect. Hello. How was that for you?
Hello. Once again, what? What did you ask me?
How was it for you?
Oh, it was really beautiful to hear everything what Danny said. But what I wanted to say is, I did ayahuasca as well, not just once, but more times. Um, I have at this moment a daughter who doesn't want connection with me. How do you say that?
Yeah,
She doesn't want to.
yeah.
For two
Communicate.
years, I haven't spoken with her. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but recently in an ayahuasca ceremony, I really went deep, 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 deep into the feeling of how much that hurt.
Mm,
I did not want to let it go. I just wanted to
mm,
feel it to my core. And I really felt it. It wasn't easy. It wasn't nice at all. But I just stayed there. I stayed by the pain and the the big thing of not being able to hug her and to feel her, to hear her, to know whether she's fine or not, to just.
mm,
And afterwards, that the pain is not gone, but it shifted. I don't know exactly how to explain what shifted, but it's different.
mm.
It's not a burden anymore. It's part of me, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, isn't that like part of the at least that's been true for me where it's when we feel it, it becomes part of us and it's not so much out there where we fear it and we don't want it, we push it away, which creates suffering in and of itself, but we allow it to feel and it go like, oh, I can even handle that. I can even be a place
Right.
and a space for that.
Yeah,
Right? Kind of we grow,
that
like we expand in that way. And the pain may still be there, but it kind of it's lost its grip because like, oh, I can handle that.
right. And I think one of the biggest hoax is that we have to let go of
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I think so
We
too.
don't.
Yeah.
We don't. We
Yeah.
have to. to let it be part of us
Right.
instead of letting go.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, that's why I said, right? I feel like this, the idea of, I mean, I feel like I understand what is meant by it, but I don't like the linguistic, like the letting go to me feels as though like, yeah, but that never worked for me at least. To me, it was always like, no, no, no,
No,
I want to bring it more in. I kind of want to expand myself so I can include the thing that I feel like is outside of me. Yeah.
yeah, and I actually really experienced lots of time that when I go really door het gevoel heen, through the feeling, that's, I guess, the translation,
Uh-huh.
then it goes.
Right. Yeah.
I don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
I have to do the opposite of letting go. No, I have to grab it, take
Right.
it
To feel it.
and
Yeah.
it,
Yeah. It's kind of like a paradox, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah.
But once again, it's upside
All
down.
right, upside down. Well, thank you so much.
Once
Thanks for that
again.
reminder. Yeah, beautiful. Cool.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes. Add spotlight. All right. Hello.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. How do we pronounce your name?
Mary Askew.
Mary Askew. All right.
Like I'm gonna ask you a question.
Mary Askew. Okay.
Yeah. I really related to what Danny was saying about his children and, feeling their like seeing their beautiful lives and how, we didn't get that, sometimes. And I think it's also, I put in the comments that I used to get that when I taught preschool. I would just have these moments with the children where I would have these memories of my own childhood come up
Mm,
and I would get very emotional, and I realized it was healing me and, purifying me. Um, I learned so much during that time in my life working with the children. So I really related to that. And I feel like I feel that way about the entire of humanity right now. Like we've all
mm,
just been through so much. It's like, oh my God. So thank you for making me laugh too. Love you guys. Um,
beautiful.
and yeah, it's very beautiful what we're going through. And I think it really is that kind of thing where we can just release it, like we can feel it. And then there was this whole funny thing in the chat about crying, and you were saying you cry, right? I cry, meditate. She cry yoga. We cry. We all crying. But that's how I feel like when I get silence, like all of the emotions come up for me.
Mm,
And it's like I feel it's you just have to let them out because it's
mm-hmm.
so good.
Oh
And then
yeah.
it's gone, you know. And when I grab onto them, that's definitely changing for me where it's becoming much lighter.
Mm,
They're not stuck on me
mm-hmm.
anymore. I used to feel
Mm-hmm.
them for like weeks on end, and now it's like I feel it and it's gone.
Right.
So that's beautiful.
Yeah. Becomes a
But
lot
yeah,
deeper.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Beautiful. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for the space.
You're welcome. All right, guys. Anybody else? Anybody want to share something that maybe help or support everybody? If not, then there we go. All right. Samantha, can you? Here we go. Okay, I'm gonna put you in the spotlight. Oh, you have to unmute yourself. Wait.
There
There
you
we
go.
go. Welcome. Hello.
No, hello, lovelies. You're right. Oh, look at the state of me. I've been crying,
Yeah.
obviously, but just not cry yoga and just cry sitting. Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
How long you got? Yeah. Just hello, I suppose.
What's most present for you?
Um. I think just that idea of especially with me and obviously the journey that I'm on, we're on, we're on. We're on. Can I have a smile? No, did anybody smile
Yeah,
at
yeah.
me?
Everyone.
I'm looking, I'm like, where's those smiles? Yeah, just Danny, you remind me a lot of somebody I know. And yeah. You um yeah, and I think perhaps it's nice to know, obviously. Oh, Swiss, I'm looking at you, looking at your face. Just, yeah, I can't look at you now then. It it feels nice when you smile, like when you do those really big, you know what I mean? The kind of, I'm just looking at Danny's face now. And yeah, I think from what you've said, that whole idea of like for me personally, I've spent a lot of time. Oh, Danny, what did you want to say? Feel free to say something. Oh, um, yeah, just that idea of really following your just when it is just like I can't eat. Oh, and really, I think perhaps what I'm doing at the minute is just trying to just really ground and just be very present and just
Has a lot of stuff come up as a result of listening.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will sit and have a cry. I'm gonna go and have a proper roar in a minute, just like at that
Yeah.
absolute forgiveness, because like
Mm.
um what what I've been given in terms of just what I didn't even know.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And just embracing the journey, just embracing that
Mm.
what the
What the
what
what the
like
F? Yeah.
yeah in
Mm.
yeah in such a beautiful way, because like ultimately, I'm not bang about like me, do you know what I mean, like on an everyday basis. And of course, obviously, then there is this entirely different just beauty, I think, really.
Mm.
So yeah, I'm gonna go and have a lovely
Do it.
cry
Yeah.
and yeah, and just give yourself a right big hug and just be like, yeah, do you know what, you're all right, mate. So
Nice.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah, you're very
anyway.
welcome. Thank you, Samantha.
All right.
All right, everybody. Last takers. There is someone. It's now or never. If not, then Thanks so much for being here. It's so nice to just have the opportunity to have these places where you can be real and raw and vulnerable. And yeah, I think just the shares at the end just, I think, go to show that we're all touched by each other's rawness and each other's bravery and courage to speak up and to say what's there. And I think that's also what really connects so much of our community. So I think we're willing to do that. And I was just thinking before I came on the call, when we were still living back in Switzerland, we did something called Real Talk Fridays. Just in our home in Zurich City, Linz and I would just, once a month or so, we just have different people invite and just, send out some invites. And then, anywhere between 5 to 10, 15 people would show up. And we would just sit in the living room around the table and just go like, all right, well, who wants to say something? Who wants to share something? And it was always so the difference from when people walked into the door compared to how we hugged and how we say hello to then when people left, and the depth and the realness with which we gave a hug on the goodbye was just such a palpable difference. And I really think I just reminded myself of that's why we do this, because I think it's the best in human, like what humanity has to offer is to come together and, to share our pain and grief and hurt so that we can actually transcend it together and we don't have to do it on our own and feel alone in doing this. So hopefully this space is a place where this can be provided, and at least even if we're on the screens, hopefully it's palpable even through the screens. So thank you so much for everybody coming here, bringing their energy, bringing their beautiful love and good intentions. And we shall do it again in a week. And Sunday is again always our MIGA space. If you want to have maybe the whole thing in the MIGA space where you talk still in front of a lot of people is not your thing, you can always contact us privately. You can just send me an email, you can just contact me on the MIGA space. I'm just going to drop the invite link to MIGA here for a second in the chat, so if you're not yet in our MIGA chat, you can just get in there. And then you can find me as well. My full name is actually not Swiss, it's this. So you will find me. Wait, we want to say something, Danny? No, okay. So yeah, if there's anything that you would like to have some support around, or you want to work with me privately, that's all available. And just get in touch with us. Okay, that's exactly why this place and this space is here. So yeah, thanks so much for being here. It's been wonderful. I'm gonna keep it open for another 1 or 2 minutes because I want to read through some of the messages, and then I'll see you again. Okay. Thanks so much.
With machine minds and machine hearts, you are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us use that power